Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. He's back. It's been about 3.5 years. Mr. Cantwell, it is a pleasure to have you back on the show.
Hello, sir. How are you? It's been a while.
It has been a while, and I had to come back for more. I need more stories. You got the best stories.
Wow, I appreciate that. There is more. Yeah, so you found me. Let's see. You found me after the crab feast, right? You saw a performance on the crab feast where I talked about salvia.
Steered me away from that drug for the rest of my life.
Yeah, don't do salvia. Anybody who's listening, I know salvia for some reason has gotten popular in Ireland, and I get text messages and stuff from people in Ireland that are into salvia, and that's some brave people because it just lasts. It lasts too fucking long.
Is it because you did too much of a concentrate of it?
Yeah, and I think it's because I'd never done anything before. I'd never taken anything stronger than ibuprofen in my whole life. I'd never smoked anything. I'd never taken any kind of drug, and my mind just was all just pretty a straight line. Just a bunch of Mormon stuff. Basically just
That's the background I want to get to talk about, your Mormon background. I don't think I've really ever asked you about that.
yeah. So I'm the seventh generation Mormon, so my family was in it from the beginning. My family joined in Ireland, and back in the 1800s, back when it was just getting started. Joseph Smith sent a bunch of people out to the English speaking world to basically trick as many people into it as he could, and my family passed that gullibility test, or I guess failed that gullibility test, because they just abandoned everything in Ireland, sold everything, jumped on a boat, came to America, actually got hit by a hurricane on their way to America, so it tore all the masts off their ship. So they just floated around there derelict in the Gulf of Mexico for several days until they got rescued by a paddle steamer that was out looking for survivors, and towed them ashore. They got hooked up with horses and wagons in one of those handcart companies that you hear about the Mormons, that they would push those big wheelbarrows across the mountains back before there was even roads, back before anybody knew what lay to the west. People's idea of what lay out west from Louisiana was basically stories that they had heard from trappers that had wandered in with a bunch of beaver pelts, and so they would just vaguely tell them, go over 5 mountain ranges and there's a place with them. So they would just get these crazy orally oral tradition style maps, and they would just basically send people out into the wilderness to colonize America. That was basically America's strategy on how to populate and to civilize this purchase that they had just bought from France, and so that's what they did. They just sent people out. They put advertisements in newspapers saying there's free land in America, and people would just come over and do it. And the Mormon Church took full advantage of that. Sent my family out to Utah. It wasn't, there were Indians living there, and they of course fought the Indians. And so I have all of their diaries because Mormons have to keep a daily journal of our days on the earth. And so you read their journals, and it's boring for a while, just starvation and crops, and worrying about being able to feed their family. And then a couple pages later, they're fighting with some tribe of Indians who they ultimately ended up killing and taking over that part of Utah that they called Smithfield. And so my family built, they built an Indian fort out of logs, like you see in the old westerns, and they shot it out with the Indians, and I think they ended up almost exterminating that Indian tribe, unfortunately, and stayed there in Smithfield then, and that was the town that I was born into. That was the high school that my ancestors built, was the high school that my grandparents went to and my great grandparents, and where I went to, and is still standing to this day. Like, you go into the cemetery in Smithfield, and it's seven generations of my family all buried up on that hill.
Good for you. You skipped out on the whole ancestry.com thing. Well, that's all I can go to for a resource, and it's not accurate at all.
Yeah, well, Mormons, we fetishize ancestry. That's where everything that we do is based on that. We're required to take our family tree back as many generations as you can, because then you take those people and you take them into the temple. That's what Mormon temples are for. So you then find out that my great 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 grandfather's name was Simon Cantwell, and he was born on this day and he died on this day. So I take those records that I find, I take them to the temple, and then I pretend for that day to be Simon Cantwell. I use his name, I have his paperwork, and then I go through all the crazy Mormon rituals that we believe make it so that we can go to heaven when we die. So that thing stems from making sure that your family that died before that they could hear the Mormon church stuff, that they can go to heaven too. You teach them all the handshakes, how to wear the ceremonial clothes. But so we fetishize our ancestry. It's just, and we believe that we'll see those people someday. I don't believe this stuff anymore. I don't know what I believe
Are
now.
you still Mormon, or are you kind of questioning everything?
I question everything. I am still Mormon. I still consider myself Mormon. I got a Mormon viewpoint on the world. Those songs still make me smile. If I'm hurt or sad or lonely or lost, those are all the songs that I whistle to myself as I'm walking through the woods. So I guess maybe if you ever believed truly, it's hard to get away from it completely. Though I think Joseph Smith um, was a reprobate. Was just running around fucking anything that could. The whole thing was begun by his penis, him basically using a story about angels to try to talk to, first of all, to try to get out of work, out of manual labor, rescue himself from an agrarian life. Second thing that he tried to do with the power of bullshit is, talk women into bed. And he would tell them the damnedest things and want them to do anything that he wanted to, and he would claim that an angel required it, or the angel would come and kill the woman in the night. So he would just, the Mormon scriptures are nothing but thinly veiled stories about the angel is going to kill his wife if she doesn't do this thing that he's told her that she's supposed to do. He doesn't name the thing that he's supposed to do, but you can kind of read behind the lines between stories of that friends and people that saw his life would say, and the stuff that even survives today after having been sanitized for 200 years. Um,
To be honest, people have done worse things to get laid. I hate to say it, but
sure.
he just happened to start a whole religion.
He was pretty bad. The angry mob that killed him was made up largely of like fathers and sons and brothers of women that he had done wrong.
Oh my
So
God.
so I grew up in Utah, lived my entire life in Utah. Nobody ever left. My grandfather never traveled further away from our little town of Smithfield than one bowel movement away. So he was afraid of using anybody else's privy other than his own. So he would only take a home field shit, and he lived to be 102 years old. And so that's as far away. He would go to Salt Lake sometimes on the train and come back, and probably busting for a shit.
I'll say obviously it worked out for him. Holy shit.
Yeah, did it? I don't know. He never went more than 2 stories off the ground. Never time at any time in his life. Really, never saw anything in his life. Great guy, but just I saw that. I heard those stories of him never leaving, and it just made me want to leave. So when I graduated from high school, I took a job in Alaska. I went up there. I had been working on radio stations, on radio shows, and things like that through high school, thanks to my dad. But then when I graduated from high school, I was like, I'm just going to go get a big boy radio job in Alaska because they paid a lot of money in Alaska because they it's like having a radio show on the dark side of the moon. They send you out to some fucking Eskimo village where, 600 people are basically, huddled together, no other human population for hundreds and hundreds of miles in any direction, no roads in or out of town, no groceries coming. They bring a barge in once a year that bring the for all the food and the fuel and things like that. And after that, it's just the world shuts off and the sun goes down and it doesn't come up again. It's just you just reading the news to an empty world. And a gigantic transmitter, by the way. So I think that these things were maybe funded by the U.S. government in some way because a way bigger radio station than you would need. You could buy something that would cost $100 that would transmit to the citizens of Dillingham, Alaska, out there on the frozen asshole of Alaska. But these guys had the biggest one. Like it's the most. I forget how many watts, but it was like the biggest radio station I've ever worked for. Was the one on the west coast of Alaska, just beaming, National Public Radio into Siberia.
It's
Essentially,
that one station in your car that never loses signal no matter where you go.
dude, you could probably get it from here on the right with the right antenna. You could probably get it from here. It's gigantic, and so we just so I went to Alaska after high school, worked at a radio job, was a nanny up there also just because why not? There was a Mormon family that needed somebody to watch their kids, so I would like watch their kids for part of the day.
Did
They
you
let me
fall
stay in their
into
house.
did you fall into another Mormon circle? Like, are the Mormons in
Yeah,
Alaska?
yep. When you're Mormon, everything is Mormon. So you just flow in with those Mormon circles because that's who understands you is other Mormons. So lived in Alaska for a short time. That time got married in this little Eskimo village to a girl that I had known for 2 weeks. I think I got married to her because I'd never been away from home before. Nobody had left my town for generations. I was scared shitless. It was back before the days when you could just pick up a phone and just call your family and talk to them, stay on the phone with them for hours because it was long distance. So if you did that, if you were on the phone with somebody for for 5 minutes, it might cost as much as an hour's wages. So you were just kind of alone, and I had a bad reaction to it and just clung to the first person that I could find up there and married her after knowing her for a couple of weeks. And she was down. She wanted to get the fuck out of that Eskimo village. So we got married and we moved as far away as Anchorage. Moved to Anchorage. She went to college. I went to work in an accounting department for some military contractor that would basically move servicemen in and out of Alaska, just shipping their household goods. I was an account payable clerk and I just processed payments for this all day long. And then my dad got into a car accident in Utah and got really hurt. And so he was gonna die. He was not expected to make it. And so I just bounced from Alaska. I just went to Utah, hung out with my dad in the emergency room, and then he didn't die, and he got not better but stable. He was paralyzed, from C2, Christopher Reeves injury, basically. Driving a wheelchair with a straw is basically what you're looking at if you get a C2 injury. My dad even had a machine that breathed for him. Christopher Reeves had a more advanced one that he could control the breath going past his larynx, so he could talk, but my dad couldn't talk. He could just make sounds with his mouth. So he didn't die. We got him uh, remodeled the house so that you could drive these giant, like the size of a small car, were his wheelchairs. So remodel the whole house so it's just ramps and giant 10-foot doorways and winches that can lift him up and drive him into this, shower that's the size of a butcher shop in a grocery store, just meant to be hosed down like a monkey cage afterwards, and get him all set up. And then I decide that I want to start a bit because it looks like he's going to live forever now. So he's stable. He's been paralyzed for a few years. He's kind of adjusted to it a little bit as much as you can. I mean, he used to beg me to kill him all the time.
Wait, what? Wait, what?
Yeah, yeah, and that's not uncommon for people that have taken care of people that are paralyzed. They're not happy. Your brain doesn't do well when you're stuck in a chair all the time and can't move. It's crazy. So he used to ask me to kill him all the time, and he would ask me because of the four brothers of that he had. There's four boys and one girl that he had as a father. I was the crazy one. I was the one that might actually do it, and I think that's why he would ask me. I don't know how I feel about that,
How would he ask you?
but he would just be like, "Look, I can't just sit here for my whole life and just stare at this wall." And I just married the. He had just married his second wife, who was half his age, so she was a very young woman, in her mid 20s probably, and they had one child, but he's like, she's Mormon. She's just gonna sit here and watch me deteriorate into this bed, and she's gonna waste her whole life. You have to kill me. And I would lecture him. I would lecture him with Mormon platitudes about accepting this test that God has given him, and the reason that you are not healed by these healings is because you're lacking in faith. And I wanted him to exercise more faith because I really believed in my heart of hearts that if he did, that he would walk again. I mean, they fill our heads with those fucking stories. Just a second.
Well, they give you magic underwear too. Not knocking the religion, but
Not
I've looked
knocking
into it
religion. Look,
briefly,
it's
but
a lovely religion, but they convince us all, the men, that we have magic powers called the priesthood. And they teach you these magical, I don't want to call them spells. They would really chafe at the idea of spell, but words that you say over, oil that gives
chance.
the oil special power. Yes, it's fucking witchcraft. Essentially, it's basically the kind of. I mean, and they have stripped Joseph Smith when the Mormonism came fresh out of the oven back in the 1800s. They had magic hats, magic capes, magic staves. It was just folk magic. It was Appalachian folk magic, anything that he could gather, because he knew that that was what his power base was from. Is teaching is if these rubes believe he's actually talking to God, or that he had a seer stone that he had chipped a hole in the center and claimed that he could put it in his hat and put his face in his hat, and then when he put his face in his hat, that God would show him, whatever he needed to show him through the hole that he had chipped in that stone. But it was we come from a religion that is based in folk magic, and a little of that exists today. They have slowly, because as people have become more and more advanced, it's a smaller and smaller amount of bullshit that you can feed them. They're not just believing everything from, I don't know, but for whatever reason, they've weaned most of the magic out, but there's still plenty of it in there for me to believe that if my dad were to have enough faith, he could respond to some blessing that I was doing for him. I would anoint his head with oil and say these words and put my hands on his head and command him in the name of Jesus Christ to stand up, and that he would be healed if he has sufficient faith. And so I could only figure that it's because he didn't have sufficient faith. That was the only reason that wasn't working. It never occurred to me at one point that it also might be that my family had just fallen for a 7-generation Ponzi scheme where we all get to be witches. So
When did you start looking at it and examining it from that point of view? Like what brought you
sal-
to that point?
salvia.
Is it because it
So
made it seem like you were in another dimension and it seemed like there could be this potentiality for something else? Like I mean, sometimes I get a message in like my cereal and I kind of start contemplating life a little bit, but you had a different experience.
the world, I don't know what's going on with life, and I've made it. I've been wondering about this for 5 decades, but I don't know what's going on with life. I don't know what's happening. There are times in my life that I've thought that I have had it figured out, but I no longer think that I do have it figured out. But there's something going on for sure. I don't
Yeah,
know what it is.
time is going by like I can't even keep track of it. We're already at the end of January. We're actually in February, so it's like I don't even know where the past month just went. I just considered maybe I was drinking a little too much and it kind of was just slipping me by. But no, I just feel like it's just moving forward.
Time is slippery. It all depends on what's going on. It's an individual thing, time. Time slows down to nothing. If you're hurt or cold or, suffering in some way, it slows down. It goes by so slow that you swear that you are imagining that. And then sometimes when you're happy or busy, it goes by so fast and you hardly notice. You look back and it's been a year. So yeah, time is funny. But the the reason that I was able to look at my religion, basically hold it at arm's length and say, okay, is this something that I really espouse to? And it was because I was in Tyler, Texas, and I didn't know. In my mind, I knew nobody. There was nobody that was going to judge me or question me if I was to look into anything. There was no, I felt like I had almost been abandoned by God, because, and so I just really felt like there was no, and I had the internet, whole power of the internet in front of me. So I just, in that safe space, I think I just sat down and just gave myself well, it first started because, I used to tell the story in Tyler about how they would say, tell them how you think you're in witness protection in Alaska and that your next door neighbor is an army ranger, and tell them how you took salvia and now you're tripping on salvia and you never lived in Tyler before, and tell them about how you're Mormon. And they would quiz me with questions about the Mormon Church, and I knew everything, chapter and verse. I could quote large tracts of scripture. They would bring out copies of the Book of Mormon, and they would. That was a party trick that I would do among my friends at work. When we would be at work and just sitting around a lot, and so it really got me questioning, because that sort of became the way I was going to find out if it was true or not, if I was really in Alaska or if I was really in Tyler, just tripping balls. And so it started by me trying to stump myself with Mormon facts. And then once you start looking at that, and Google will just feed you things, you know, one after another about the Mormon Church, because all of this happened in the age of newspapers. All of this was written down someplace. There were accounts of all this in the New York Times, for Christ's sakes. So you if you want to research this and really find out unbiased what happened at the beginning, because the truthfulness of it now kind of depends upon it being started the way he said. If he's full of shit and was just doing this to get pussy, then I'm an idiot for putting oil on my dad's head and chastising him for not having enough faith. If if Joseph Smith was a prophet, and then maybe I'm not such a fool. So I got a vested interest in this. So I start looking into this and realize that, oh, he was kind of a con man, and built around himself this cult of people that could have more than one wife, and that appealed to a lot of lecherous old men, and that kind of thing just built itself a certain momentum, and they led a death cult out to the middle of nowhere, killed a bunch of innocent Indians, set up shop, and they're out there now, just living. I think it's almost 100% Mormon at my high school. There's only one girl I knew that wasn't Mormon.
It seems like Scientology, where like if you have an in with someone, like a group, like that's why I feel like a lot of people join Scientology is so they can actually get in somewhere because they have connections with like Hollywood and stuff like that, which is interesting.
Yeah, there's a power. There's a power to a group, to any kind of an organization, fraternal organization, even if it's it has nothing to do with God. There's a power to, frats. It's
It's
just a
fun. That's why
networking
everyone
thing.
goes in the middle of the woods and with cloaks and they do things in front of an owl statue, Bohemian Grove type stuff. That Freemason fun stuff. They love doing it. I don't know why. It's so weird. I had an academic on here talk about the Bohemian Grove. He was like, "Yeah, it's real, but it's like let's decipher fact from fiction." And I was like, "Well, what's the fiction?" He was like, "They're just a bunch of people in front of an owl statue that are just directing policy." And I'm like, "And that's not fucking weird to you?" And he was like, "No, what's weird about that?" I was like, "Get a hotel room, go to an office building, make
They've
decisions
done.
politically."
They're bored doing that.
I know.
They've done the office thing to death. It's just an opportunity for them to go out into the woods, be able to say that they took, ecstasy with some famous
Danny
politician
Glover.
and or whoever, Spiro Agnew.
I know.
I did ecstasy off the tip of a Spiro Agnew's dick in the '60s, at it in front of Moloch the Owl God. But these little fraternal organizations, they bring people closer. They bring people together. They're team building exercises essentially. Um,
That's how you got to think about it. Team building exercises.
because nobody's got any superpowers. I've seen no evidence of that. Nobody, no, Moloch the Owl God never rises up off of his stony perch and helps them destroy their enemies.
They are making a lot of money though, so maybe it's a money curse.
It could be have something to do with UFOs.
Why do you believe in UFOs? The government announced it. Look, the government announced it. I tossed all my belief out the window.
Dude, if you've got the people that we trust to identify whether or not that's a MiG or a 747, a Delta flight, the people that we have trained to look at that and make those visual cues with instruments and with by sight are the same people that are coming back to us and saying, "Hey, man, there's fleets of UFOs out there, and they have video of these fleets of UFOs, and they've some of them have started leaking out." And so it turns out that for 70 years, that's been our big dark secret. We got our first UFO in the 30s because the Vatican gave it to us because they were afraid that it was going to fall into Hitler's hands, essentially. So when Italy fell, they left it in safekeeping with the Vatican, and the Vatican gave it to us, though we had no idea what it was. We took it and tried to back engineer it. Then we started paying attention to these things. And then since that, they claim now in their testimony before Congress, they have more than 9 of these crafts. Some of them so large that it was preposterous to even move them, so they built an airport over it.
Don't you think it's suspicious though that they're acknowledging it now after they denied it for so many years?
Well, they denied it for as long as they could, and they were literally killing people that were telling on it. But then they Stephen Greer got this whistleblower act passed, where basically people could come forward again, even though they were sworn to secrecy, they could come forward, and so people started doing that, and so they were no longer able to keep it secret anymore because just they took people took advantage of this whistleblower act, and that's why. I mean, you've got deep, deep, deep career long CIA people that use this whistleblower act, people whose job it was to make sure that the skeletons got counted properly in the closet. The people like that are coming forward and testifying before Congress under oath, having used this whistleblower act, that this is what's going on, that we've been talking to aliens for a long time, and that we weren't the first people on this earth, and we're not the smartest people on this earth, and there's a whole race of people that evolved here way before we did that just moved underground or under the water in one case because it protected them from asteroids and solar flares. And so it's not smart to live on the surface, as we will soon find out, I guess, is what the testimony has been that's been coming out before Congress. So that's what been why these interests in you know boring tunnels and stuff like that. And anyway, so yeah, there's something going on, but I don't. But how do we get talking about aliens?
I have no
Oh, I
clue.
was saying, Moloch the Owl God. There's nothing magic in this world unless it's aliens. So yeah, and those people probably are painfully aware. That would have to be the overarching, invisible, electrified third rail of American global politics. If you know secretly that you're not the superpower in the world, and that we're not the smartest people at the table,
I think
that
you
would
could just
change
get
everything.
I think you just get that by just trying to expand your consciousness out more without having to worry about aliens and all that. I think you could just do that through whichever means. I mean, you did it through salvia, but other people can do it through other forms to try and see. Because once you hear something like that and you hear people that like just get transported to another place or another dimension, I mean, then they start talking about multiverses and then you start looking at exoplanets. In real life, you can see that there's obviously things that there has to be other life out in the universe. Doesn't necessarily have to be here, but it would just be small-minded thinking to think that your life is the only thing.
Yeah, we still don't know. Even if we believe in UFOs, we still don't know if human consciousness it survives death.
They don't even know
You
how to
know,
describe human consciousness. They don't know what it is still.
yeah, yeah, that's really true. We don't know what it is, and in some ways, the thing that it feels like right to me is that it's a simulation. I mean, if what we can prove by the observer effect is that the universe doesn't render unless something is observing it. That's the old, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound? And the answer is no. They can prove by experiments that the answer to that is no. With that whole thing where they shoot the particles through the double slits, as soon as it goes through that second slit, it just becomes a wave. It becomes a possibility of where it could be. It doesn't. It only if you put some kind of a sensor in there to track it. It's just like playing Xbox. If I'm shooting my gun into the bushes, it doesn't render the leaves moving unless I zoom in on it because it wastes processor speed. And that's what our universe does. And it does it faster than the speed of light. So it does it in violation of all of the rules of the simulation that we observe around us. The only thing that can violate that rule of the speed of light is the game. So if you because once you look and see you put an observer there, those particles can communicate to each other faster than the speed of light. It can be on the other side of the universe, and it will. And in some physicists believe they actually can go backwards in time to make things happen that were observed. That they can in their equations. There's no reason that it would only have to work in one direction.
Like some people get deja vu.
Yeah, the deja vu is like either you're reading information from the line next to you, or you reread that spot, or that was an edit spot, or something like that. But they people believe that, and I certainly believe that this follows all the rules of a simulation. We would what are the chances that we would just happen to, of all of the trillions of people that have lived on this planet over the, you know, I don't know how much of the 4.5 billion years there's been anything like people. That number changes all the time, but there's lots of them. And what are the chances that of all of those people, you and I would happen to be here at the time where we can do anything as rugged as ride a horse or chop down a tree, but also can basically speak to each other at the speed of light through a little device that's the size of a pack of cards that works with wires that I can't see. So it's just, there's no, where you and I will never probably know real starvation. I live this crazy, stupid life. I'm not out there shoveling, you know,
Oh, it's better now because we're in so much prosperity that people actually do starve themselves on purpose, not on
poor
accident.
people are fat
Yeah.
in our country. Yeah, because food's so plentiful. But I,
I don't think it's a global thing though. I think it's like something that's in our brains. Like you ever had a night of drinking, like maybe you thought you were gonna die because you drank too much, and you wake up the next day and like everything kind of looks different. Not that like you're blind from alcohol poisoning, but like you just the world looks different. And
you're born again.
I start noticing that like when I'm walking around, I'll see like I don't know, I either I didn't get enough sleep or something, but the world looks different. Like everything's more detailed or it's more like I'm catching things in a better light, like you would take an Instagram photo or something.
Yeah. And I think the reason that is, and I've noticed that also in times that I've like almost died too. I think, and so I think when you are, you know, have a near miss with that one, and when you're throwing up, when you have a night out drinking, you basically poison yourself. You having a near death experience because your body's like having to produce all these shock proteins to basically keep your system all running, even though you've got this shit running through your system.
I mean, I party when I wake up in the morning from it. I'm like, yes, thank God.
Yeah, survived another one. But I think that those proteins give you a certain visual acuity. I think that's why the world almost looks new after something like that. You feel almost born again because you got all of those endorphins running through your body that have just kept you alive while the bear was, you know, running out of the woods. And then now you didn't die, and so the world just looks beautiful.
How many near-death experiences have you had?
Oh, you know, everybody has near death experiences, like everything from the time the car almost broadsides you in the intersection. That kind of shit happens to me on the reg. You know, times when I've almost died in a car pretty numerous. Motorcycles, certainly, little boats, more than I can count. Times that I probably could have died. Um, Swimming out in the ocean. I've had times in Alaska when I've gotten, you know, like put my snow machine through a hole in the ice. You know, there's been a number of times that I probably could have easily died, except for maybe just luck. And and in a multiverse, in an unlimited universe, those moments would all branch off, they say, into other realities where I did die. You know, there is a narrative track that followed from every possible decision.
Do you believe like when you dream and it's kind of like a realistic dream that's a multiverse, like you're kind of, the Doctor Strange movie where they talked about like if you sleep or something like that, it's like another version of you in another dimension somewhere.
I
I
Yes,
think about it
it
more.
could be.
I think about it a lot after that movie. I was like, you know what, that would make a lot of sense because my dreams are way too realistic for my brain to create.
Yeah, my dreams are never they never make sense in the morning. They always seem to be my subconscious telling me something. It's rare, you know. I do have these super. I have been a lifelong bedwetter my entire life since I was a little boy, and even now, as a 55-year-old man, I'm not immune from. If I have a really vivid dream where I feel like I am actually in there, I have got until the next time I have to pee to get to wake up naturally. Otherwise, I will go to the bathroom in that dream world, and I will go to the bathroom in my bed, and that's how I will wake up. I have lain next to a girlfriend and wet the bed on her, dreaming that I was pissing in a urinal.
Maybe she's just splashing her Mormon oil on you.
Yeah, man, nothing tests a relationship like that. But
Well, you got to give me a dream. I got to hear one now. I love talking about dreams on my show.
I don't I don't have any big major epiphanies that have ever come to me in a dream,
I
really.
had one where Nick Swartzen got attacked by a seal, so I've been checking his tour schedule, just making sure if he's taking a trip out there near the islands, I'm sending him a message.
Why Nick Swardson?
I
Just
have no
randomly?
clue, man. We were on a vacation and I don't even know what beach it was, but I remember this and this was months ago, but it's so detailed to me that I can just remember it. It scared the crap out of me. And I don't really sleep. Like if I fell asleep right now, I'd sleep for an hour, but it would feel like 10 years. And I don't know, I've always been like that my whole life. But I had this dream where it was a bunch of people, we're on a beach partying and we're swimming in the water. And Nick Swartzen's one of those people. And then all you see is these giant group of seals come out and just start attacking everybody. I mean, they're biting. If you ever been bit by a ferret, like that little nibble that they give you on,
I've been bitten by a mink. Yeah, I know
so
what you mean.
I was in a dream and that's what it felt like. I was feeling that. Like it felt like something was pinching me, like how those little bites are. And next thing you know, these seals started getting attacked by these sharks. And I was like, what the hell's going on? So the next thing you know, the water recedes, everybody's on the beach, everyone's got bite marks in them, and this one shark just goes one last time to grab this seal and lands up on shore, and the shark dies on the beach, and everyone's real quiet, like what the hell just happened? Then I just see Nick Swartzen walk towards this shark because the shark's stomach is going like it's moving inside, something's inside of it. It ate a seal, so I'm guessing it's the seal. Didn't chew or anything, just swallowed it. And he walks over with a knife and stabs the shark in the stomach and starts pulling down. And as he did that, the seal bit him on the arm and ripped like all of his flesh off his chest torso. And he just looked at me and screamed, and I woke up. And I woke up, I was like, what the fuck was that?
That's apparently there's a story there. That's a complicated thing that your life is trying to tell you.
Don't watch bench warmers before bed. That's what it
Well, just the
is.
consequences of trying to help somebody or trying to step in, or I think that's your subconscious trying to tell you some shit, trying to warn you.
I don't know. I don't like therapy. I'm not digging into it.
Therapy's fun. I love therapy. I would be hurting if it weren't for a lifelong commitment to talk therapy.
I feel like you can find meaning in actual life, like deeper meaning about it. But then everyone always and I've had dream analyst people on here on the show before talk about, oh, it's all a secret message. I mean, it makes sense, but I don't have the time to decipher half the shit. I don't know how to decipher that dream.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and my subconscious, I will process things through writing. Sometimes I'll write stories, comedy bits about things, and I don't even really know why I'm writing a bit about that, except for that it's just, it's responding to like some dream I've had or some feeling I've had or just something I'm dealing with in my personal life, but maybe don't want to look too closely at. So yeah, dreams are crazy. And I have no idea what's going on. I have no idea because like that salvia trip,
You're gonna have to explain it because I think people are not knowing what the salvia trip is.
so I took salvia for the first drug that I ever took, kind of by accident. Took a heroic dosage of salvia and ended up having an experience that seemed like every minute of 8 years, you know, but it lasted like, and this is just a guess, but like 90 seconds in the real world. So really, really quick. So your brain has the ability to render, unless you believe in that it's just you just switching channels in the simulation or to another universe or whatever. But still, the time dilation is possible to that degree. You could live an entire human lifetime in a few minutes on salvia. You know,
I've read one story. One dude spent 20 years as paint on a barn.
30 years as paint on a barn. I think I told you that.
That's
Yeah,
rough.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And he described it to me. He said it was the boredom and the fact that he couldn't move or talk, and you would feel the cold, and he would feel the heat, and he would feel the paint blistering, and he would feel the fading, and just the monotony of it was the part that he described the worst. And that was my feeling as well. It was the monotony. It was how long it lasts. It's like, Jesus Christ, man, 8 years is you. I started to believe I was crazy,
Yeah.
and for the last half of it, I accepted the fact that I had brain damage.
Well,
That's how long it lasted.
there's no way you can come back. Like, I don't know how, like, you probably still think about it today, but I would be questioning my own reality. Even hearing the story, I question it all the time. I'm sitting here going, like, what happens if I could just easily take a drug like that and then snap back into a different universe? It makes me think if I'm like, am I autistic and nobody's telling me? Like, you know what I mean? Because I hate to say it like that, but if you really examine, like, everything you like right now, your whole life, how everything's going. But it can be completely different with something that our mind could just react to a drug or react to a thing. You could be in a coma and not know and just wake up. The next thing you know, you're like, holy shit, that's 30 years gone. And everyone's like, yeah, but you did some good paintings on the wall. Holy shit, look at you.
Yeah, yeah. You don't know. You don't know what's going on. All you get is hints and feelings at it, and that's the number one thing that I would like to have answered for me. Because in some ways, it feels like I've had three lives. Like I had a very specific, very straight laced Mormon life from the time that I was born that to the time that I took that salvia. So that's like one life. And then I went to Tyler, and I became a completely different person by the time that 8 years was up. Just by not being Mormon and just by hanging out with my friends and playing music all the time and just kind of buying into the whole vibe that was that group of friends working on that farm. It was kind of a very close knit environment. And then when that 8 years ended, I then began anew in this timeline, but as a completely different person, and became a completely different person. Who I am now is doesn't bear a mooncast resemblance to the person that I was. You know, I'm a stand-up comic now. I wasn't poor before. I had I had lots of money because I had a successful business, and I had owned my own house outright, and it was life was good. But now I'm poor, very poor, in
I think you're rich with knowledge. You're rich with knowledge.
rich with knowledge and rich with experience, and wouldn't trade it for the world. And I think I could probably still get back to the place where I was worried about money all the time. And just that's all, where my dreams ended. And that was just bigger numbers, bigger numbers, bigger numbers. That was my whole line of thinking. I could become that person again, maybe, but I don't want to. Having been that person, I would rather not have money than not follow my art and not follow creativity and not try to decipher the world from a different side of my brain, essentially. So I'm a completely different person than that person. I'm a completely different person than the guy that was in Tyler. I'm a completely different person, certainly, than the guy that was in Smithfield, in the same town that his family had wrested from the arms of the Indians under false pretenses, some guy that was trying to talk his wife into a threesome.
So when it comes to the salvia trip, when you sunk into that gun floor and you kind of came up, you were being pulled onto a boat
Yeah,
by water
I was
skiing with
on the
friends.
boat. Yeah, I was on the boat. I was coughing, coughing like you cough, like makes your fingertips throb. Uh, and I was on the boat, but I felt like I had just been pulled aboard the boat or something.
So you still remember those feelings?
Yeah, yeah. Just like I remember high school, you know?
And then wait, so when your life in Tyler, Texas, I mean, I know you didn't do a lot, like didn't get to be social because you were kind of thinking, when's this trip going to end? But when it came to how different it is from this reality that you're in, can you distinctly tell the difference, or were you just remembering emotions or feelings and things of that sort? Because you didn't go anywhere. You were still in that room, but in your mind, you transported to a completely different place, but you're still able to feel things.
It was as real as this. It was indistinguishable from this. Having 8 years to sit and think, is this real? Does this feel different in any way? I could detect no difference. Here's the one difference I would tell you in retrospect, in hindsight. Almost nothing happened there. Like, it was like,
What do you mean you got a raise and everything? You worked on an apple orchard.
I mean, it was very predictable. Like, you could almost predict where I'm going to be on December 1st next year, because you know the kind of chores that you're going to be doing, that because everything is done on a calendar by the seasons on a farm and in a little town where you're basically just hanging out at the farm, or maybe at one of the people's houses that lives on this farm road. Not even being as sociable as church, so your world kind of shrinks down. But nothing seemed to happen. Like, my life, I was used to things happening. You're getting robbed. Your partner's a murderer. There's some kind of intrigue with your fucking family, or you're not getting along with somebody. There was none of that almost in Tyler. It was very the same on day to day. There would be little friend drama, a little bit of it, but nothing like the kind of run and gun battle that this real world seems to be like.
Like Truman Show?
Maybe,
Or
maybe
just
just
a
a little
different
too.
time?
Maybe your brain just doesn't have time to render all those things. If it's coming from your brain, maybe it's just a calmer, maybe it's got a certain value slid way down if it's a simulation. Maybe the drama knob is set at a 2 instead of a 20, you know.
Did you ever try and explore and try and push the salvia trip to see if it had like an end to it? Like, did it have political events going on? Did it have a certain vibe or time period it felt like it was stuck in, or was it you feel like it was modern, present?
It felt modern present, and I did try to go to I drove to Utah and actually drove to Smithfield, and because my family's all buried there, and my ancestors built that town, and so if I exist someplace, that's where I'll exist. And I drove there, and it was nothing like the way I remembered it. Nothing. There were no Cantwells in the graveyard. This that high school wasn't in the part of town that I remembered it being. It didn't look like it should. It was all different. Enough to convince you that you had made it up different. Enough to convince me that maybe I'd never been to Utah.
Did you start thinking you had a head injury?
Yeah,
I would
about
have I
then.
would have went right to a psychiatrist immediately.
About then. That's when I started to kind of gets literally everybody in Tyler, all of my friends that had claimed that said that they had known me my entire life, said that I had a head injury, and the whole town knew it. And so it's really hard to fight that. For 4 years, I'm proud of the fact that I was like, "You guys are all crazy. I know who I am. I'm in witness protection in Alaska, and I'm Mormon. So no, I won't."
God damn it, that sounds like a fake fucking schizophrenic.
Yes, yes, and they would say, "Hey, that's not true. I've known you
Hey,
your whole
hear
life."
yourself.
Yeah, I don't know how you know so much about Mormonism. That's really crazy, but I've known you. We went to kindergarten together, bro. And I was with you when you got hurt. So you got hurt. You're just
Wait,
gonna have to take my word for it.
did they ever
For
cry or did they ever
Yes,
break? Oh God.
yeah, it broke their heart that I couldn't remember them. And they thought I was gonna get worse. They thought I was gonna get like develop tremors, or they thought that it was, that they were gonna have to take care of me because I didn't have my family. I only had this group of people that I worked on this farm with, and my family had died in a car accident. I'd had a sister and a mother and a father, and they all died in a car accident when I was in high school, but I didn't remember any of that. But I was basically all they had, or they were all I had, and so they felt incredibly responsible for me
Mostly
and
because
didn't let me down.
you were there when you had your accident, apparently.
Yeah, yeah, it was those guys I was out water skiing with.
Did you ever look for anything like holes in the simulation or anything that you feel like would trigger you and try and wake you back up since you knew you were in a trip?
I tried all that kind of stuff, and I even contemplated suicide at one point to try to wake myself up. I was like, if I end this, because I think I've got kids to get back to. I'm trying to get back to my kids. I think I've been gone for 4 years. I'm like, where am I? Am I dead? I'm not dead. So is this hell? Am I? So I had everything in that amount of time. You consider everything, everything, hypnosis, just everything.
I mean, I don't know. See, I mean, the suicide thing, you could accidentally, what happens if it kills you in reality too, doing that? I mean, you
Yeah, that's why I
seizures,
didn't do
so
it.
your seizure, imagine not waking up from it.
Yeah, I mean that's why I didn't do it.
Was there anything like anybody that you could talk to, or yeah, have you ever seen me here before, or at the apple orchard, anybody that like, or they all just knew you, they all had a background
They
on
knew
you?
me. They knew me. They'd known me forever, with except for one or two exceptions. They had known me forever. So all it all they were convincing. they convinced me that I had imagined my wife and my family, and that I'd imagined some big murder trial and living in Alaska and building a house. And the more they talked, the more that sounded ridiculous. Of course, none of that happened. That does sound crazy when you think of Mormon. Who's Mormon? And they would all laugh. And then it would always devolve into, yeah, but he does know all the words to all the Mormon songs, and he can play a few of them on the piano.
Mhm.
So that's weird.
Do you
And then they would all go, yeah, that is weird. Oh well,
it-
the human mind's funny. Maybe this is a simulation. Maybe So they would, and then it would be this conversation that we're having right now, except for we're in Tyler and we're laughing about how I used to think that I was in witness protection.
oh my God. Dude, it's hard to keep track. That's how mind bending it is.
Yeah, yeah.
When it, yeah, I mean, have you ever thought, I know you probably wouldn't try it again, but have you ever thought like if you could take salvia again and know that you were on a salvia trip, would you do something differently? I mean, you learned skills, if I'm not mistaken, in the trip that you still use in your actual life as well, too.
Well, I no, I've definitely went someplace mentally in that 8 years. I took a journey as far as basically convincing myself that I didn't believe 100% that the Mormon Church was true, and that is a journey in and of itself. But and I'd seen you talk about this on other shows that I had learned to play the ukulele, but that's not true. I already knew how to play the ukulele
Okay.
when I got there. Like there was a ukulele on my couch the first night, and I sat down, and my fingers knew exactly where to go.
But you never played it before.
No,
So you already knew it in the trip.
yeah, but my friends knew that I played the ukulele in Tyler.
So you didn't even have to do any training or studying. You just already had the ability to do it.
I was already good at it.
All right, you might be sale pitching me on some salvia right now. I could tell you that much. If I can
You
learn
can
an instrument,
definitely you can definitely learn an instrument. You could definitely learn a foreign language. You could definitely you I believe you could earn a PhD.
does it transfer over the credits, the college credits?
No,
That's what sucks. I went to this other university for 8 years. Well, what do you mean eight
ask me
years?
anything. Ask me anything about the pancreas.
What's a, are you serious? I can ask you about the pancreas?
No, I'm just saying that's what you would
I know,
say to
I
them
know,
when
I
you're
know.
trying to get them. Yeah.
I'm really good at trivia night. I know a bunch of cool facts. Man, I hope this is a salvia trip. And then like the 5 years I spent podcasting actually just went into like 20 seconds in the other dimension.
Every time I have a cool moment where I'm about to because sometimes I'll get to open for people, famous people, or hang out with them in some dim aspect. Every time I have a cool moment like that, the thing that I say to myself is, "Please be real.
Oh
Please
God.
be." I hope there's. Oh, I'd hate to be walking out on stage right now and shrink through the floor of the stage, and I'm falling and falling, and I would come out of that fucking gun room again, knowing what I know now about my wife, and knowing what I know now about my life. Please don't put me on that gun room floor again.
Have you ever like I know you mentioned the barn experience, you heard that from someone, but did you try searching for other experiences and talking to people about it and seeing if they had something that was similar to a whole other life, another thing? I mean, you looked up
Yeah,
these.
Ari Shafir did. So he lived for a number of years in a world where everything was underwater. So you would just the air was water, everything else was normal.
Did you, yeah, but for your experience, you had things where you could easily Google and search up people's homes, if this was real license plate numbers. I mean, you mentioned doctors' prescription pads that were filled out. Your brain was able to process that. That's more something that you can try and fact check and look at, and it's not that different from reality. But living underwater, I mean, I don't know if it was still like cities like we have here that were just
Yeah,
all
he says it
underwater.
was. He
Okay.
says it was exactly like here. You go to a job, you pay your mortgage, but everything's underwater.
Why
And he
don't we
was
have
like, "This isn't."
scientists researching this?
because I think because it probably sounds made up.
I know, but
It sounds like something your brain manufactures when you've had too much salvia.
why are we wasting all this money and time trying to reform prisoners in a failed program when you could just give them salvia and have them spend like 80 years in a whole other life doing something and then come back with actually like essential knowledge and real change?
Dude, heroic doses of mushrooms given to prison populations would be
That's a good point.
life changing. Life changing. Imagine being stuck in a cell and being told to essentially sit and think about what you did. I don't even know that they're really saying that these days. But if you were to give people access to, I mean, mushrooms are not always fun. If you've done some horrific shit in your life, mushrooms have some things to say to you, and you might not want to hear all of it. But if you lock me in a dungeon someplace and you don't give me mushrooms, my brain goes to sleep. If you lock me in a dungeon and you do give me mushrooms, my brain turns into mushrooms. I slowly become a super being that can't contain anymore.
How many people come out to your shows on the salvia story that they heard? Because it's all over the internet, it's everywhere.
It happens all the time. So yeah, you'll just people will happen to hear that you're near their college or whatever, and they'll squat up and come out, and yeah, it's got legs. It's still for something that we recorded for the first time 6 years ago. It's everywhere now. There's just and people still download those first versions.
A lot of people I've seen, I mean, they believe it, and then there's some that don't. They're always questioning, like, what about this? And what about this? Or how did he know this? I'm like, I don't think anybody can make that up. It's way too detailed.
Yeah. And I question every facet of the reality of it myself. Is this something that my brain just made up while I was on this drug? Is this a channel that it changed, with a chemical balance in my brain? Do I change channels in the multiverse somehow? Is it is that really my I don't know. I don't know. The Tyler seemed more real than here because the thing that always strikes me as artificial in this world is the fact that so many fucking things keep happening. It's there's the murderer, but lots of things like that. Like there was this guy that I caught a serial rapist one time, like having an affair with his wife and accidentally figuring it out, and I called a press conference
Wait,
to
what?
talk about
In the trip?
no in here. Like you can
What do you
if
mean? Hold
you
on a second. What? I've never heard
oh
this.
god
How
no,
have
I
you
don't
not
think I've ever
explained
told.
this? How have you not brought this up before?
There's lots of things like this that have happened to me. So if you want to go on YouTube and type the words Kahala Panty Burglar, you will find a news story from like
I'll have an FBI guy show up at my door. So
so this guy was like, do you want me to tell the story? It's a
yeah, man.
how much time have you got?
We got as much time as you want.
Okay. After I that had my salvia trip. I basically came out of the salvia and I was like, this isn't real. This is crazy. We've wasted our life chasing money. We need to do what really makes us happy. I called a real estate agent in one day, sold my house. I said, whatever you can find somebody, cash deal. I want it. It didn't owe any money to the bank on this. I built it. And so I was just like, cash deal, find whatever you can find me cash today. So he called around some dudes that he knew had some cash and got a cash deal for me that day. And I uh, put my business, I just opened up Craigslist and I put an ad in Craigslist. It was like business grosses this much in assets. This is how much I want it. And it was a fabulous deal. And I said, it's going to go fast. First cash gets it. And I had the cash in like 13 hours so if you just believe that money's not real and you just need to get the fuck free, you can get free pretty goddamn fast, even with a family of six, mind you. Um, Gave the dogs away, you know, took all of our possessions, just got a construction dumpster, had a big garage sale, just, fire sale, whatever you want. And then whatever wasn't left, we just had a construction company put a big trailer dumpster out there, and we just hired people just to throw everything in there. Everything. Couches, clothes, everything in the dumpster. We pared our life down so that we could live on a sailboat together as a family in Hawaii. Because I had visited Hawaii several times from Alaska and loved it. So I was just like, fuck it. Daddy just realized that we've been going in the wrong direction. So we're going to go to Hawaii and find out what direction to go. So we moved to Hawaii. Um, Family didn't want to live on the sailboat, so they would get seasick, and I was really the only one that was into it. Maybe my wife, and so we got an apartment at the right on the beach, so that you could see the boat from the apartment. And then the sailboat was just free for me to have adventures on. And the adventures that I wanted to have the most were I wanted to have sex with as many girls as I could, just because I
My
don't.
motherfucking man.
Yeah, because I'd spent my whole life just having sex with this one person.
God
And so
damn.
we realized that there was no God, and we weren't going to get. I was telling her, listen, there's no God, there's nothing. So I basically talked her into a threesome, like Joseph Smith. So I talk her into she. We find this young tourist girl that's there on vacation, celebrating getting out of college, and we're like, hey, we've got a sailboat. You want to come hang out with us out on the out, out in the ocean? And she did, and so we got down with her, and then we both liked it, and so that just became what we did. So that was the full time. We just would she would go find vacationing college girls on the beach and bring them to the boat, and we would smoke weed for the first time. We would drink for the first time. We'd take mushrooms for the first time. We would have these. We would sometimes take two or three girls out there with us and fuck them all at the same time. Just have the craziest time ever. Just basically rinsing the taste of Mormonism out of our mouths. And one of the girls that we took out on this boat was a girl named Julie. And Julie was a young German girl, college age, I'm not sure, mid 20s. And she had just married a wealthy businessman there in Honolulu, a guy named Jonathan Ching. And she was like, but he used to be in she told us all these grandiose stories about him that he told her about himself. But basically, she was like, yeah, he married me just because he wants arm candy, but really, he never fucks me because his dick can't get hard. And but he knows that I'm fucking you guys, and that's fine with him, and he wants to meet you. So we don't know how things are supposed to work. In the we're Mormon, basically. We're fronting the fact that we're these gigolos. And so we're like, yeah, if you want to, I'll be cosmopolitan about it. I'll go up and meet you if you want to meet your wife's lover. That's maybe the way people do it. So I went up there. I meet him. He's cool. He's convinced. He's trying to convince me to take my sailboat to Maui, which he's like, it's not that far. Now that I know he was trying to do that so they could kill me, because I would have absolutely gotten killed trying to sail to Maui on my sailboat with my 6 months experience at sailing. So meet him, and the more I talk to him, he tells me these stories that are obviously bullshit, right? Like stories about being a Green Beret and wiping out whole villages, and just the kind of shit that you would never, if you had been a Green Beret, would not tell somebody on the first day that you meet them, right? So he's just got bullshit written all over him. And I'm like, well, that's fine, I guess. And I meet some of the other girls, and he has filled this mansion in Lani Kai with that's like I forget how many millions of dollars. It would be like a $20 million mansion in today's prices, probably maybe more. But this massive marble mansion with an indoor swimming pool that was surrounding this courtyard, he fills it with young college age, mostly, women that he would just rent a room for if you looked a certain way, he'd rent your room for like $100 a month in this fancy surf neighborhood in on the north on the shore of Oahu. So I was like, oh, he's doing the same thing with this house that I'm doing with my sailboat. He's into college girls, and he's so what's he up to if he's not fucking his wife? So I start to wonder if he's fucking the other women at the place, and then I start to fuck some of the women that are living in his house, and he seems to not care about that in any way. So um, Julie is snooping through his papers of her new husband and sees all of this paperwork where he's got a different name of Harrison Mew, and she finds a key in this gym bag with his Harrison Mew stuff and some receipts for a where he's been paying on a storage unit in town. So she and I track down this storage unit, bullshit our way through, and use the key and open the storage unit, and we roll open the door, and there are tens of thousands, maybe, but like a smaller storage unit. So I'm not talking about a warehouse. I'm talking about like it was probably 10 by 10, the storage unit, but it was full of panties of game worn female panties and a small camping card table and a belt on the card table it's like a utility belt that he has made where it has a vibrating cuff for his penis to sit in and then a vibrating butt plug in that he can put up his ass and then a battery on it and then so he can whatever he's doing with the panties he can do it with both hands essentially.
You said
So
worn panties?
game worn panties,
Can you
yeah.
imagine you just open that up and you're like, oh, it smells like
it
shit in here.
It smelled like a locker room in there. It smelled it. There was a
Stained memories of young Scarlets with big dreams and broken hearts.
yeah. So we called the cops and we were like, "Hey, what the fuck is this? Is this guy a serial killer or what's going on?" And they're like, "Holy shit, that guy is not Jonathan Chang. That guy's real name is Harrison Mew, and he's out on parole because he was breaking into people's houses, stealing their panties for weeks, and obsessing over individual girls. And then he would come back later and cut the screen out of the window and come in and rape you." And was a rapist, and they said that they even tried to pin a murder on him, but they couldn't make it stick. But they said this guy he's not supposed to be doing that. He's not supposed to be, collecting women's panties and calling himself, and he wasn't rich. He had bullshitted his way through by assuming he got false documents that made him this person named Jonathan Ching, and he falsified a bunch of credit stuff and basically bamboozled his way to rent this mansion in Lani Kai and what he was doing is he was stealing those women's panties. He was harvesting fresh panties from these women. He was rummaging through their dirty clothes and getting a freshie and replenishing his crazy thing he had going on there at the
That's the
storage
time you
unit.
should have converted somebody to Mormonism.
God.
Got his life on track or something.
So the cops come get him,
Fuck.
and I call a press conference. I call all of the newspapers and I call all the TV stations. I'm like, hey, the Kahala panty burglar just got rearrested and he's getting arraigned. They're violating his probation right now, and we're gonna talk to you all about it outside the courtroom. So I arranged for all the women that stayed at that house and me to go, and then I of course go take over the interview. But so we have a press conference, and then they take over this mansion in Lanikai, the women that stayed there, and they just throw crazy, crazy parties until whatever arrangement he'd made with the owner wore out or whatever. But if you look up Kahala Panty Burglar on Kahala Panty Burglar on YouTube, you can see this press conference with me with a magician's goatee standing out there looking all indignant about this guy with his rape house.
That's fucking wild.
Yeah,
Jeez. How is that not a story you have on stage? Oh my God. I'm telling you, man, they gotta make a movie about your life one day.
that's why it seems like this is not the real. It doesn't. This part of life doesn't feel real because too many things like that keep happening.
No, I'm like that a lot. I think I mentioned that with my buddy I'm trying to get you on a show about. My life has always been weird off scenarios, and I think it developed my personality, and it doesn't jive sometimes with, it's just because I just say weird shit sometimes. But I think, I don't know, like I witnessed a drug deal before when I wasn't supposed to. I'm in scenarios that I'm not supposed to be there for. Like there's like times you're up when you're not supposed to be up, or there's something you're at that you're not supposed to be at. It's been my whole life.
Yeah,
So it brings
me
me
too.
comfort if there's an alternate dimension out there where that guy's having all the fucking success.
Yeah, I mean, I often find myself, like you say, in scenarios where I really shouldn't be there, you know?
Do you regret that though, or do you actually enjoy that if you really look at it? Because if your life changed from Tyler, Texas, and it completely changed afterwards, you got to look at all this stuff now. Like, I mean, this is definitely 100%. Like, I mean, it's got to make you more daredevilish a little bit too.
I prefer it when things happen. I prefer this. I don't know if it weren't for I don't know what that means about me. There's some negative connotations that might suggest itself to, but about why I'm attracting all of this to me. But it is fun. I am having fun. As horrible as it all is, I am having a lot of fun.
Before I want to ask one more story from you, but I got to get a paranormal experience from you, man.
I'll give you a paranormal experience that happened to me just recently. So, um, I have this big Sprinter van that I travel around in, and then I have this warehouse that I have that's got stage stuff in it, like folding chairs for comedy shows and scenery from comedy shows, and you know scenery and backdrops for like various podcast projects that we've had. It's just basically this, you know,
Work van.
yeah, but I mean the warehouse is just like it's like just flotsam and jetsam from various comedy shows. So I basically live in that van in the warehouse. I live in parking lots of comedy shows that I just did. But when I'm not out of town, I park it here and I open up the doors and I just kind of you know live like that. So recently, and I have this dog that's been my lifetime companion for the last 8 years. Big silly dog, and he got stomach cancer, and we had to put him down, and um, he would always sleep next to me. But I have noticed sometimes recently, just within the last few nights, that if I'm when I'm sleeping, if I and I remember one night I woke up and I felt the weight of something laying on my back, and I pushed against it, and I heard in my ear a growl, like my dog's growl. that I swear I wasn't hearing it in my head. Maybe I was, but it felt very real. It felt like I pushed my dog off me, and sometimes I can feel him laying on the bed when I'm laying in bed. And then one time I put all of his toys, like I gathered up from around the warehouse, put all of his toys in one basket, just trying to decide what to do with them. And I was walking past those toys one night, and one, I don't know which squeaky toy made this noise, but it went beep, beep, like it used to when he would bite it. And it takes my dog was a big dog and he had really robust toys. So it takes a lot of pressure too. It's not like a mouse could have done that. So and I don't know what that is, but I've also there is a kind of trickster entity in the on earth that will sometimes masquerade as your dead dog to fuck with your head and to drink whatever comes out of you
Damn,
when
man,
you
you're
feel that way.
that dog's trying to communicate to you from the other side, and you're over here like it's a fucking trickster. Don't buy it.
It could be. It could be.
I don't like thinking like that. I like to think the positive.
I think that light that we see, I think that's a net.
I think that the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
that's
that's a
waking
trick.
up out of coming out of a fresh puss. I think that's what it is when you're waking up in the hospital room. You ever hear that
Maybe
theory?
that could be.
They
So
think
you think
it's
it's just immediate reincarnation, no time for reflection?
yeah, that's how
What's
it's
the
got to be.
what's the point of it if there's no reflection? That's when you learn all the lessons.
I don't want to reflect on the bad shit. Should
It's
pop
not
me
all
into a new
bad.
one. I want to be Hugh Hefner's kid.
The bad things are the most important things.
That's what they say, but nobody ever learns from their bad experiences. They just tend to forget about it and push it down until someone breaks it out in therapy.
I for sure remember. I for sure learned from the bad things that happened to me. It's happy things that don't teach me a goddamn thing.
Well, you don't think to remember the happy moments.
Yeah, yeah. Fear is our strongest emotion for sure.
Would you trade it all in though?
No,
You wouldn't want to go back to Tyler, Texas and try out that life for a little while?
no. I like this. It's been a lot of hard work. Writing all this stand up and doing that, and I would hate to have that just disappear.
You could just bring the jokes to the alternate dimension.
Yeah, I guess stories would translate. Stories would
Imagine if you
absolutely
were like,
translate.
they start putting your name on billboards over there.
Oh, if I was big in some dimension.
Or if you went back over there and there's missing posters everywhere. We're missing this guy. He left like however long ago. You're like, God damn it, I didn't mean it.
Time works in the other direction. I go back and it's been like 300 years.
Their great grandkids are telling stories about this guy who was bringing food over at a barbecue and sunk into the lawn.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes you think. But Mr. Cantwell, I appreciate the time you gave me to talk on my show again. It's a pleasure catching up with you again. Is there a place where people can find any of your links if you have any dates you'd like to promote, if you have any website, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that?
The only thing that I do is I maintain an Instagram account, the Steve Cantwell, all one word, lowercase.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure I link that in the description. It's been a pleasure chatting with you again, Mr. Cantwell. And thanks everybody for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank Podcast.